Hi, good morning. Okay, so welcome for those that are at home to join this Zoom link. Those that are here, thank you for coming here to talk about passport. So for the next 15 minutes, 50, we'll only focus about this topic, which is, a very important part within the EU policy landscape. So I want to call on stage Gabriel Castellini from Blockchain. He will be the moderator. You will take good care of the slides, you will be sharing, and then you all would please come and have a seat. And
Thank you very much, Peter, for the kind introduction. Thank you for coming here downstairs, still in beautiful venue, here in Altenburg. In this panel, we will be focusing on the application of blockchain technology in the development of passport. A topic that the business going to get even more in construction as we go on, because we are doing the implementation, the standardization activities in September JTC 24 as in developing, and so from 2026, especially later with the DATs, we will know more about the requirements and implementation of the sectors, which was one of textile, super relevant for today, especially batteries, as we also look at electric vehicles. So it's going to get construction is very nice to see and the opportunity to discuss the topic here now, together with standardization experts, also the perspective of the European Commission and the SME and the industry perspective. So we will delve more into topics, and I want you to explain with the speakers, and then we will follow them. And we have John Schwerin, Principal Economist at GPRO, European Commission, Belen Suarez Lopez, CEO of Go to Innovation, and also an expert at TC 307 on blockchain and technologies, and also expert on innovation management and sustainability. We also have David Mahmoud, head of international partnership and business development. This system, SMEs based in the Nordics, in Denmark, and also representative of the Nordic Blockchain Association. So without further ado, I would like to start with talking. I want to give the floor. If you could please give us some insights on your role and possibly a few details on the different product passport from the perspective of the European Commission. How does it align with the broader goals, especially the twin transition, digital and green? How does the DPP take the sum of these two aspects and bring them together?
Thank you very much for having me here and for all of your good work. I can reiterate the comments that we have heard this morning, two great projects, and I think that it's an important day to also celebrate our achievements, which fall in line with many things that we have done on blockchain, but these two are very important at the time. Principal Economist in the unit responsible for the digital transformation of the industry in DigiGrow. DigiGrow is the real economy part of the European Commission. We are responsible for all policies that relate to the internal market, to industry, entrepreneurship, and small and medium-sized enterprises. I'm now for 24 years in this part of the Commission, and I started on industrial and competition policy, then access to finance, and now digital transformation of industry. And next month we will be reorganized, and then my unit will turn to what we call responsible business practices, which will be sort of umbrella thing for everything related to real economy and regulation, policy making, general terms. Now, I've been in this space for more than 10 years regarding blockchain, and I take a little bit longer to come to your question because it's important to me. I was involved in 2008 in saving all boxes. during the financial crisis on day one. And we realized at that time that centralization causes losses. And it is not coincidence that we had at the same moment destroyed the statistics installed the Bitcoin environment. Blockchain is for the Commission much more than a technology. And I need to say very clearly that we are not neutral. We support blockchain. And there are many reasons for this. We want to build alternatives to centralized risk attractors that we see in many aspects, be that in financial markets, be that in the data economy, be that on cybersecurity, or now with quantum. And I think that distributed ledger technologies are the best way to address these things. So the Commission in 2016 made a big brainstorming exercise, and we identified blockchain, and I now call it blockchain, meaning distributed ledger technologies, as one of 4 technologies that we are absolutely positive about, not only in the field of finance or any specific area, but all policy fields. We said that this is a field where we want the European Union to lead globally in terms of policy making, and that is at the same level as artificial intelligence, as quantum computing, supercomputing, things like that. So since then, I think we have engaged in a number of projects, and I personally would start from where we would like to get to. And where we would like to get to is what I call Web3, where we have an integrated digital space where every type of utility is completely entwined, because at the end of the day, all of this is code. And we need to have a representative thing that takes the function of a container in the real world in this digital economy. And that is what we call a token. So when you imagine the world out there, how it emerged in terms of industrialization, we have containers, physical containers everywhere. And physical containers have the huge advantage that they are very simple things, that are very much standardized, that are very flexible based on this standardization, and they can basically put anything into it. And that is also how we see the future digital world, because in a token you can put payments or money, you can put intellectual property rights, you can put a physical thing that is tokenized, or you could put in there nonsense or whatever, this depending on preferences, which same as technology are subjective preferences. So Web3 is a value space where I think it is up to no one, especially not from the public sector, to tell people what they do. But we need to have a great sort of architecture on which we build it. And there's a function, in our opinion, for the public sector to provide the fundamental layer of a public blockchain infrastructure, which we call apps. And it is not to be mandatory and the only thing to be used. It is in competition with other things out there. But I think if the public sector has a function, it is to do that. And to accompany that through many activities, including skills development, I created under the Pact for Skills the Digital Large-Scale Partnership, where we have a lot of good work also with experts present here today. And thank you very much for that. We have the European Digital SME Alliance as one of our lead partners. We have INAPA, we got it with the Chase project and other things. So a lot of work being done. And we try to incentivize that. The digital product passport in this regard will be a sort of blueprint for everything. And I don't care where it comes from, because now we have this more eco-design approach. We also have digital product passports, sort of digital product passports, in our most successful so far project on the real economy, which is the anti-counterfeiting blockchain infrastructure, where we try to detect fake products. At the end of the day, a digital product passport, in our opinion, is a digital data sheet that includes necessary information to fulfill certain purposes. And we could imagine, and this is my personal opinion, but we're getting very much in this direction, that if you build that on a centralized basis, where you cannot fully control access on a need-to-know basis, where you do not have full protection of data, also relevant for our industry, of course, to protect business secrets, but also our citizens, this is a dystopic nightmare. And this is why I think that while we are technology neutral, DLT is the only system, in my opinion, that provides the answers for that. And that is why we absolutely promote it. And I don't care. I have a lot of discussions with my colleague about technological neutrality. I am not technological neutral. because technological neutrality is basically a blanco check for legacy systems that have messed up a lot of things in our economy, continue to exist, and I'm against it. And so I think that what we need to do is less relevant in terms of what we now have emphasized of what we now call the digital product passport in this specific legislative field, because at a certain moment we will have that information for every type of product and service. I give you another short example, and then I stop. After the reorganization, my unit will also be responsible for the new legislative project on forced labor. And that is something that, of course, you can imagine if you design a product, if you build something physically, you would have to check even the most personal information on what is the age of a person, what is the employment status, who worked on what. If this is not fully vetted against any sort of abuse, it would be a nightmare in terms of privacy and data protection and fundamental rights. And for that, we need standardization. So much of our work is to connect, in our opinion, the right people to be able to understand that vision, but also have a very granular approach in applying that. Because one thing that we learned the very hard way is that you need to align it with the needs of small enterprises, startup industry. When I was in the jury of this anti-counterfeiting blockchain infrastructure, for example, which we have now built and we have tested, and it has 5 pilot projects at the moment and is very, very much advanced. So a working digital product passport environment in a way. We had 5 excellent proposals, and I loved some of them very much because they embedded my theoretical vision of what Web3 would look like with micropayments and tokens and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we chose something different. And why did we choose something different? Because in the jury, out of 10 people, 5 were practitioners from the companies who told us that forget all about that. What our people with limited skills need is something to scan. If you imagine a logistics chain throughout value chains, basically, where you physically transport stuff, you have a QR code on this. These people do not care about far-fetched ideas of what is the future digital economy. They have a scanner and they move things from left to right. And this is where the compromise needs to come. And the only way to embed this important work is really to take an extremely fine-tuned granular approach that we have on standardization to define jointly with a value composition group in dialogue the precise needs that people on the ground need to have in line with our policy. But the driver is always, as the technology decentralized, the driver must be what can we expect from real people in real situations to do and understand, and not what is our remote political objective where we go to. But the digital product passport with tokens as the containers of the future and the digital work will in the future be the absolute essence and minimum requirement for everyone who's in the digital economy.
Thank you very much, Joachim, for the very nice introduction. Fully agree with the point of technological neutrality, but also the view of looking for the best technologies with it. And I think many today, the speakers and also the participants can agree that we are discussing the team in particular to support the implementation of the digital product passport, because the infrastructure and framework closely align with what is possible with blockchain. And also, thank you for the bridge to the standardization part, which will be mostly on speaker Belen. So, in general, from a general point of view, how do you see the path in which standards can support the actual implementation, innovation, the technology? Referring also to the point shared by Joachim, what can standardization experts and also the industry by participating in standardization can do to advance the implementation, for instance, of the DPP and the blockchain technology?
Thank you for having me also, and it was nice to speak again with Joachim, and I also participate as a jury on the anti-counterfeit infrastructure, and it's good to have a let's say successful example of the implementation of blockchain, because we can better understand. Well, let me start for the finish. You asked me how can a standard contribute to develop innovation? And it is, as I am an expert on innovation management, let me start for the finish. What is innovation? Okay, we have in mind that at the end, the DPP should support customers for make informed decisions, thinking on what are the more sustainable decisions they can it is, a definition, of the purpose of the DPP. So when we comment on the standard, what is innovation about? We define innovation as something new that creates value. But for who the DPP can create value clearly, in case of successful implementation, for customers. So it would be a good way. But also there is a key stakeholders we should keep in mind. It is the industry. The industry affected by the regulations, because all products and services in the next year should have a DPP along life cycle of the product or services. So we can imagine that the whole value chain, the whole supply chain of any product or services will be impacted. But also for the service providers of the DPP solutions, helping these companies, this actor in the value chain to produce data and to maintain the DPP. So something from the beginning is very clear. We have here multiple parties, we have here multiple stakeholders, and the only way we can have a common language, a common framework, is harmonizing some key aspect of the DPP. If not, it will be very difficult. So on one side, we said it should be neutral technologically, but also neutral from the commercial solution already in the market. So we are looking for to open, we are having in mind a single market, but the single market should be based on open competition. So we need open standards accessible to anyone that need to implement or use this standard for any function, any, let's say, role they could play on the value chain. And here, when we think on the implementation, again, innovation management standard try to explain all the time, wait a moment, when you develop something new, let's say the DPP, you need to think on different stage. And depending on the stage, maybe you have a different success factor. So if blockchain can be used or not for the DPP, or a standard on blockchain can support the DPP adoption, will depend on the stage we are. For the moment, we are only defining what is the DPP system at a high level. It is what we said from innovation management standard. We are on the first stage, identify opportunities, maybe developing some concepts. However, if we think on implementation, something is critical. It is the information storage in the DPP should maintain along the life cycle of any product or service. So maybe we are thinking on years, where information storage provided by actors from different sectors, from maybe different regulations, maybe different markets, because at the end of the day, someone could be happy or not with this, but we are living in a global economy. And we work on global value chains. So how, thinking on implementation, we can maintain integrity and let's say immutability of the data from multiple value chains, exchanging from different sectors, different industries, different type of organization. And the DPP regulation said, who is responsible to maintain the DPP is the economic operator, so only one actor. So if you mentioned before, Joaquin, about what happened in the financial crisis, I would ask if we couldn't rely on financial institution, really you think that we can rely on only one service, let's say economic operator, to maintain the whole in the whole value chain, in the whole life cycle of products and services, this information, we can ensure in that case immutability of the information, or even we can ensure integrity of this information. So clearly we need to look for something that fits the needs we have. For the moment, we are only in definition of needs. The European Commission obviously have to maintain the neutrality of the technology. However, when we evolve a bit more, and it should be, for instance, in the dedicated act for service providers, for DPP service providers, should be the moment when we should analyze, really, we have any technical solution or implement all of these, fantastic criteria we have in mind. And I fully agree with Joaquin. For the moment, the only technical solution is about DLTs, that at the end is not only one technology. We emphasize a lot that DLTs is a set of technologies, very diverse type of solutions. So in one concrete moment, depending on one concrete DPP product, because will not be the same solution, the same data, the same information, and the same value chain, we can identify what is the best. But the only way we can ensure competition, we can ensure a small organization. Why a small organization? Because in any value chain, more than 95% of the actors are SMEs. So if we don't want to create any competitive advantage for any large organization, then we need to think on a standard. So I would say, obviously I come from a standard, so today I will sell my book, for sure. However, I don't know other way when we can have in the same table people coming from the academia, people coming from the industry, large and small, maybe consultant, maybe regulators, maybe diverse typology of stakeholders discussing at the high level in some key aspect. The only way for the moment is by standards, so hopefully we will be successful at least to avoid create obstacles in the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And talking about the implementation side, it will be on the industry part and also especially on SMEs. That's why it's a thank you for coming, David, representing the system. So can you tell us a bit more about how you see the market circumstances referred to the DPP, and especially, do you think we can go beyond the just some eco sustainability and circularity aspects and go beyond the basic requirements? Is the DPP a technology that can actually be an asset for companies to digitalize that process, to collect data, track the supply chain, the international European level?
Yeah, so Trace Systems, just quickly, it's a product that was co-developed with Pepsi. So it's not off the street startup. It was many years of development, and that name just came in November, but it's under Chromaway, because with Chromaway was one of the 3 finalists with IOTA and Elon Group, right? So those were the 3 finalists. I joined the team right at the end of the PCP. So right when it was they presented their final data and everything, and I joined during the commercialization. So the last year of commercialization, I've talked with a lot of companies, batteries, textiles. So I'll give a bit of a context of B2B and B2C. And I'm happy that we're in this building because I see a lot of old cars, and now we're going with electric cars and batteries. When we started doing our pilots, so we did our pilot with the end of the life cycle of the battery. So it was one OEM who was there. Then we had which was in Germany, a battery collector from Norway, and a secondary marketplace from Sweden. So we wanted to also show how this battery can move between borders. And for one, batteries are complicated. You have cells, the pack is the last one, so you have modules, right? So you have cells, modules, and packs. And all of them will have to have a DPP, because when you, at the end of the life cycle, when you have to disassemble, verify, test if something can be reused, at the end of the day, it has to be passed on to the secondary marketplace if it's reassembled and then resold on the secondary marketplace, because that battery or the components can be reused. So, and when that data flows, one thing you mentioned about how the DPP can be used for supply chains. And one thing we realize is everybody in their supply chain have their own silos, and they don't want to share information. And that's a huge problem. And now we're, with our team, we're thinking of how, because we're blockchain based and we're not centralized, how can we use tokenomics to incentivize the people to share that data within an ecosystem? Because the problem is if everybody in the upstream keeps their data and only share what they have by law, At the end of the life cycle, they have a problem because they don't know what to do with these batteries and they don't know the full composition in them. So then it defeats the purpose of the BPP completely. So in terms of B2B, it's very important to use that technology in terms of using tokenomics and gamification. So even at B2B, you still have to make it interesting and how they can benefit out of it through a return on invested capital by sharing data and by working with the ecosystem rather than keeping that data to themselves. When it comes to B2C, so we during the BCP, we did one pilot in the textile sector. And yes, this is nice that somebody scans and gets the information and say, okay, I'm eco now. Like most of our clothes already have QR codes, not DPPs, but they have QR codes that bring you to a website. How many of you in this room actually scan your QR codes when you buy clothing? Yeah, exactly. That's my point. So, and how many of you actually sign up to emails from companies? So when you buy a new shirt or something, and actually read those emails without clicking delete each time. Okay, it's huge, right? But you see that's the thing. So when it comes to using again gamification and tokenomics, the important thing is to give the power to the people. Because if the people feel that, okay, they'll scan it once just so they know how to wash it and like, okay, it comes origin from here, okay, produced yarn in Italy, and now it's a piece of clothing that ends up in the hands in Denmark, right? It's not enough. People will get bored and they just won't do it. If you give them the power of having, what's it called, a good app, gamify things, so giving them the power through DAOs so that you gain tokens every time you scan, every time you go and recycle something. If you bring it yourself, you get more points. If you actually order a car to pick up your clothes, which is okay, some people don't want to actually go and recycle it themselves, you'll get less points because you're less. So all these things, this is how you create real circularity, is by engaging the brand. We're just the tech providers. Like the brand should tell us like, how can I engage with my clients? I will develop it for them, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about the brand and their clients, at least at B2C, right? So it's really up to them how they want to engage them to make circularity fun and not a burden. And when it comes to B2B, same concept, right? How can these companies feel that they have the power of gaining something out of sharing their data? So that's my take on it.
Thank you very much for the perspective. Now, I just wanted to quickly open the floor to any questions, especially in person, and then we'll also check for the part online. Yes.
I also work in the music industry and in music industry, I already documented basically when people download the material, so we don't work with iTunes and so on, we work directly with Bandcamp. They can collect tokens. It's via QR code, that's the easiest. So they can collect value via the tokens. In another project, I tokenized a complete coffee shop. So everybody who entered the coffee shop gets value back from the tokens, scan it, and afterwards the token will placed in the market. And now they have value. So when you speak about crypto and so on, personally, I invest in crypto, but I only invest in crypto that has value. Most say crypto has no value, it's a Ponzi scheme, whatever. The long run, you will see that it will have value, the good ones will stay. Anyhow, for example, if you take Cardano, they're not just a coin, they also have a complete blockchain and so on. It's also something that they can use. For example, they already have a blockchain where they trace the chain of goods. So in that aspect, it's already busy. The thing is, for example, in Europe, what I see, now that's a question for you guys. Like you said, it's very difficult to put it to bring it to the top of mind of people, especially SMEs and so on, forget it. I work for a multinational, I talked with the top IT guy and the CTI guy, the company, they never heard of blockchain. Never. They don't know what it is. Simply, they don't know what it is. I'm speaking about a multi-billion-dollar company. Blockchain, never heard of it. So from the European side, this is, you have to really work on like commercializing or more, putting more publicity in this, because normal companies, they don't give a damn. I believe in blockchain and so on, but the way it's put in the markets is completely wrong. If you look at in the United States, now they're going to tokenize the complete voting system. They're already way ahead. This should have been done here in Europe as well. And I think it's from the European side, it's your task to put it more and more into the open. So blockchain should be available everywhere. It should be used for voting and so on. If you see the problems that you have for the voting in Romania, you have the votings in Bulgaria and so on. These problems would never have surfaced if you had tokenized voting. If you put it on the blockchain, 100% sure. This would have been clear. Just
I'll just say, just one thing, because I know you guys are the experts in that, so that you guys, I'll just say people should know how to, like, that they're using blockchain without knowing that they're using blockchain. And that's the thing, those Web3 wallets are really tough to use. So we also give the options of using it like a Web3 wallet through Web2 kind of, or like you put your email and it creates a wallet for you. So there has to be this easy feeling of it. At least that's another thing that I see. So people shouldn't even know that they're using blockchain. But I agree that the EU experts need to educate more the European population.
I liked a lot of things of what you said, especially because you said value. I think with all due respect, you underestimate a few things that indeed are difficult for SMEs perhaps to see. First of all, I think it's a generational issue that we're having here. We have 4 billion gamers. If I speak to an average 15 to 20-year-old, he might not know that he's actually using blockchain-based systems, but in metaverse environment, they're doing it all the time, and they're much more advanced than the largest part of our industry. Second, we have a lot of projects, actually. We have many more startups and systems using DLT in the real economy than in other parts of the world. We have voting systems. For example, in France, the overseas territories are voting on blockchain. We have other things. We have an issue of scaling in 27 countries, which is the baseline problem for which also standardization is key. I very often hear these examples, and I travel a lot when you hear Singapore and all these places in the world that are much more tokenized than we are. I mean, I'm talking about the Emirates now. If you go to the Sheikh and say that he gets a little bit of your wealth in the system and he signs a decree or so, it's much easier than having 27 countries and the European Parliament and the Council, etc., agree on something. That is actually why we need decentralization. Third, for me, the absolute keyword that you said is value, because I don't care about anyone else telling me what is value. I define what is value for me. And that is why I like meme coins. I don't like the digital euro. I like privacy coins. I love mixers because they obfuscate. I mean, I have a lot of things. These are my preferences. And that is what I want in a decentralized economy, that you define what are your values, that you decide with whom do I engage on my values decentrally, and then you do what you want. And this is also why we're bringing up a proposal now for DAOs. I've just done a study on this, and this is for the next cycle on a legal wrapper, where actually I don't want any KYC, I don't want anything that is disclosed in advance. It's only when you engage in a regulated activity that a decentralized community has to disclose anything on identity and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on, but it cannot be seen. But I would say when we look at the market in 5 or 10 years, it will be there, but it takes much longer in Europe because we do it in a sustainable way. And I use this term very broadly. If you now look the last few days only on the Bitcoin price movements, for example, Bitcoin should not move downwards when traditional securities markets are moving downwards. Why it is moving downwards? Because it's in the US completely corrupted, also in other parts of the world, by politicians that are deliberately using it for price movements to enrich themselves. There's nothing to do with the decentralized structure. And therefore, I think in Europe, we are working more on a longer term, but then we get the bridge perhaps, and Belen, you will want to add certain things on that. But one thing also I would like to connect this discussion with what you said. It has to make sense. And value is a starting point to make sense. What you said, it has to be voluntary. We have to convince people, but not by explaining them the technology, but we're having to give them gadgets that basically engages with these things and makes them voluntary use and play around with certain things. The biggest driver for innovation that we have in digital economy is gaming.
And also, my wife just bought diesel pants, and I checked the tag. I was talking with the salesperson in the store, and I realized that they have an RFID, one of those strips, and a QR code, and that's also another thing that's really important for logistics. So the RFID needs to connect to the systems, the IoT systems. So from manufacturing, and the moment it goes to the store and exits the store, and the NFC chip or the QR code has to be the engagement with the customer, right? So instead it stays within the same blockchain or whatever structure DPP that they use, off-chain or on-chain, but that's then because the RFID, you cannot scan an RFID with your smartphone. I mean, there has to be NFC or your, so there has to be a combination of both. That's something I realized as well recently.
Thank you, David. Just to build up on both these points, also from what we heard during the Blockchain project and also our activities in blockchain is that we also need to promote a bit of demystification of the technology. Not only communicating that its presence, it's beyond crypto and it can actually be used for other applications, and it's a perfect fit for other applications and it needs to be explored. And maybe this part of trust, privacy and security, which we also discussed later, maybe Belen, if you could add something about how can standards also help the public, but also the public bodies, the administrations, how they can be more trustful about the technology, how do standards help them be more confident in the use?
Okay, thank you. I think that my reply will connect will reply you, but also we are discussing. Thank you for highlighting the word value. If you remember, I said innovation is something new that creates value. The second part is what is value, as you said. Normally, US, I love US mindset, but for US mindset, value is economic value, but there is a lot of value. So what's really matter, depending on the stakeholders? For you, is the economic value and the valuation, let's say, of any concrete crypto assets, let's say. But value at the European level has a broader concept. So we think on value, not only for one concrete stakeholder, for shareholder of one company, we are thinking of value for society, value for SMEs, value as a whole system. And this is a point of, you mentioned about governments and, public institutions, because for them the value is not valuation of one concrete financial institution at the end of the year. It is the impact are creating for stakeholders. So I love to speak about technology, but always I have to say, wait a moment, let's stop to speak about technology. Let's speak about business and positive impact. Because business at the end of the day have a multiple stakeholders, not only the customer paying today for one complete solution. We are facing a competition. There is more stakeholders, the new entrants that is quite important, especially you mentioned on the new generations. So we have to be aware the moment we are, the context we are facing, and it is the moment when public institutions need to rethink how they are creating value and how they are, what is really matter for their stakeholders, and what is the indicator we will use for define what is value, and the most important, to evaluate the contribution of, let's say, the value contribution each organization, each actors is creating into the ecosystem. So it is quite important the difference, not to speak about the market, but the thing about ecosystem. And it is how we can measure this, what is value, and how we can evaluate value creation, the duplication of content. It should be done in some way. And again, we need to share the methodology. We need to provide tools for the markets and for, in that case, public institution to measure the value contribution. And then again, we need a standard. So I promise sell my book. So I have to say, in terms of sustainability, not only economic viability of one concrete company at the end of the year, or one concrete of the valuation of one concrete ISO asset or cryptocurrency, whatever you want, okay? We need to think on how we can really create value for our stakeholders in sustainable manner. It is not only today, so I love the entrepreneurs or maybe speculators. I'm very happy with the movement in the valuation of Bitcoin or any other crypto assets. Great for them. But at the end of the day, we need to think in the long term, in the life cycle perspective. And I don't think that Europe is lower than US. The problem is Europe include in the equation more, let's say, more aspect. So if I have to evaluate my year as a professional and only because the money or the incomes I had, it is, in my view, a poor approach. And we live in a very, very competitive world, very changing context. So maybe it's the time not only for Europe to gain the advantage, learn from US mindset, also would be the time for US understand the complexity of the topics we are commenting at the European level and the European values behind of this concept, looking for a sustainable world and economy for everybody.
Thank you very much, Belen. And being mindful of the time, I would call for the last possibility to ask questions, both in person or online. Otherwise, I will just go for a final round, a few sentences. Looking ahead from your perspective, what do we see in the application of blockchain, and especially the DPP, which are the next steps, the new opportunities, even some challenges, maybe looking also the international perspective of the global supply chain, as we all know, it's a complex situation. So what's your perspective? I would start with David and then to the others.
So my perspective, I just wanted to say one thing about the US and EU. So US is a fixed from Canada. So US is a fixed culture and Europe is a prevent culture, right? So we prevent problems by creating regulation because we don't want people to get damaged, while the US are a culture that damages and then they go and fix it after the damage is done. So and my perspective of DPPs, I have to say one thing that just worries me about it is, especially now with Donald Trump in the US, is are they going to treat it as a non-trade tariff barrier? And will this affect the way we will do things in Europe when it comes, because that we will regulate the EU within our companies. Any export to the EU will also have to have a DPP. So hopefully the pie is big enough for everyone. One company can't have it all, but also we have to work with regulators from other nations or trading blocks to make sure that things are standardized properly so that the global supply chains are fully functional.
Okay, thank you. In my viewpoint, what is the next? First, the next should be most probably we will see simplification of the DPP regulation because the Omnibus Directive, we are in the middle of the discussion at the European level, how we can simplify. So when we are speaking on innovation, my understanding is think on simplification always is a good idea. Of course, we have to balance between equality and not compromise the big goal, but any simplification would be a good idea. Second, I will speak here from the blockchain trilemma. Some of you are experts on blockchain, so basically we have three main points. One is the security, so we shouldn't avoid compromise the security of the DPP. Second is decentralization, so if we can decentralize more or less, it will depend on the benefit of centralized versus decentralized solution that we have to evaluate. I agree with you. In some cases, we should make some economic assessment of this value proposition of both solutions. And the most important is scalability. And one fundamental in technology is the technology can scale according if it's accessible, if it's easy to use, and also it is a cheaper technology. And this is one problem we have on blockchain, because blockchain has a scale and it's not a cheaper, let's say, technology in the market. So it's something we have to keep in mind, and according we simplify the requirements and also the fundamental requirements and also advisable requirements for the DPP. On blockchain, or any solution will be easy to implement and demonstrate value for the range of stakeholders.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Just to briefly add on these things, which are all very pertinent points, we will get all of that rather soon. Digital product passports, we will get digital payment systems, we will get some forms of digital identity. The good thing, in my opinion, about the technology is that you cannot prevent it, so it will happen anyway. But the question is, how can the, let's say, traditional sector, the public sector, in cooperation with industry and SMEs, come in a credible way to also have its share? And that is the big, actually, battle that we're currently having, and that we're having in the next 2 or 3 years very immensely. To what extent can our work be aligned with the fundamental principles? In my opinion, it has to stay open source. It has to stay diverse according to the technologies. The Commission has not prejudged on any specific blockchain system. We are basically using Ethereum for EPSI, but I would say the ideal system is a system that is a sort of layer 0, like Polkadot, where you have multi-chain and ensure the interoperability through indeed the standardization. That is of key importance. It has to stay voluntary, so whatever we do on wallets, etc., public wallets are tremendously discredited in Europe among citizens, especially also enterprises, rightly so, because they don't offer the correct data protection. GDPR review is a very similar thing, so there are many, many challenges, and the call is completely out there whether the things that we will do, and we will do them, because a lot of the things in the work program of the Commission, they never say blockchain, they never say tokenization, but it is impossible to do a lot of things actually without these things here. Will have to compete with other solutions that also use the technology. That's the same in finance, where you have, let's say, public money that goes on-chain at a certain moment. You have the private bank solutions, you have the cryptocurrency. Similar things will be in the economy on the digital product passports. And if we don't manage through standardization to get a system that is flexible, but as simple and clear as COVID passport, where basically you cross a border and it is only green or red. That is where we have to get to, because your data are no one's business, even not the government's business. And therefore, the basic principle of having a separation between the onboarding of identity and then once you are vetted, using this without any form of disclosure on who you are and what you do, also in terms of consuming items, etc., is a fundamental requirement that will decide on the fate of all of this. But it's one thing to have things in the work program and do that, like the digital product passport. But if that goes in the wrong hands, especially from those that prefer a top-down approach, it will be completely discredited and there will not be data.
Thank you very much. And I think it's a great take to close this panel. I want to thank all the audience. It has been a pleasure to moderate this panel, and I also double thank all the speakers that made excellent points. I hope they will be able to stay here a bit more, maybe, if you have further questions. And I will leave the floor to Rita to introduce the next panel on digital finance. So please feel free to stay here. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to say it was a very nice panel, with different profiles and from policy, standardization, and from industry. And now I'd like to give the floor to the next one, which is focused on digital finance. So I'd like to call on stage Knut, who will be the moderator of this session. Hi, Knut, it's already here with us. And then we have 3 panelists as well. So 2 of them have very similar names, but don't confuse them. So the first one I'd like to call is Cristiana Aristidu from Cristiano LLC. Hi, Cristiana. She'll join us shortly. She's just finishing some conversation. Hi, Cristiana. Sorry, I don't mean to hurry you up. Take your time. Then the other similar name is not Cristiana, it's Christian Grafnar. Hi, Nice to see you, Christian. Welcome, Christian Gaffnar, who should be and then the last person will be George Browns-Huber. Sorry? Okay, apologize. I just got informed that there was a problem with Hope's flight, so unfortunately he cannot join us. But then we have Knut here, Christian and Christian. So Christian and Christian, confuse them. Different names but similar. And I'll give you the full start the part. All finance Knut. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rita, for the intro, and too bad that George is not with us. But here we have no online opportunity, but he sent me here, I don't know how many questions for the discussion. Therefore, it will be not boring, but let's start a little bit with brief intro, and maybe we can start with the background to introduce the work.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Christiana Agostini. I originally come from Cyprus, Greek speaking, originally. So I'm a lawyer in background for the last 28 years, especially working in the banking and finance area of law, let's say, which during the last 15 years, of course, as you know, we are working in the intersection of law and technology, and I will explain later if you need to know more about that. So yeah, standards expert with ISO and many different committees, both blockchains and AIs, but also environmental committees and like net zero committees and sustainability committees like the sustainable finance, for example. I'm the head of the national delegation for TC307, also Sensenelec and ETSI. So I'm also a member in these committees, working also closely with Christian, also in TC68, which is in the financial services, traditional financial services in the ISO now are looking forward to be more progressive. We are looking into implementing tech in financial services with Christian in Northern and West. So yes, this is who I am. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my name is Christian Grafenauer, so I'm a computer scientist by trade. Did a little bit of research on the general area of privacy and blockchain technology, and then basically moved forward to standardization to have a bit more real world impact instead of staying purely in the theoretical domain. And in standardization, I'm currently the project leader of the digital currency vocabulary in ISO TC68 Joint Working Group 1 that Christiana mentioned. And I'm also I'm actively as an expert in ISO TC307 in various projects, and I'm just recently got elected convener and project leader to SEN JTC 19 Working Group 3, which is PII in blockchain and DLT. And we're currently kicking off a project on a European project on guidelines for processing PII with blockchain technology.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Before we go through the question of George, maybe start with a easy one. What are the current kind of challenges you are addressing in the standardization to digital finance?
The standardization work. As I said, yeah, of course. As I say, yes, but I have, in order to focus on standardization, I have to share some foundational, let's say, basic background information to set up the ground for elaborating on your question. So, first of all, what is the relationship between law and standards is the question, and I will of course support that we need more lawyers, and I'm ready to explain why. It's the intersection. So we do have so many laws and regulations. What are regulations? Regulations are also laws. So compliance, I mean, lawyers are one of those professions that are experts in achieving compliance because they can understand the law. So why do we work in the standards? Is because it's very simple. Standardization operationalizes law, operationalizes particles. That is why the standardization requests. Why this happens more these days, nowadays, comparing to how it was before, because as I said, I'm 28 years in practice in the banking and finance area. So I'm very much aware of all of these regulations in the traditional banking and finance areas, like MiFID, MiFID II, MiFIR, market abuse, transparency, and all of this, which more of the professionals who are working in other areas kind of ignore. And when you ignore existing traditional laws, I mean, it's exactly there that the lawyers are needed to just raise their voice for the rest of the professionals to understand what is going on. And what is going on? What is going on? I mean, standards, as I said, operationalize laws because laws nowadays are complicated, very complex. If I, for example, choose to implement MiCAR, I won't be able to. I mean, I get, in practice, I have clients like banks. I train the Central Bank of Cyprus several times, and the Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission, and other regulators. And it is exactly from my experience, that I see what is missing. So what is missing, I get from my practice. I see it in my practice. I see what they don't understand. I see the puzzles that we need to add in the puzzle. Have I answered to your question?
Before I go to one question, we see currently kind of a massive initiative by the Commission to set up new regulations, the different standardization requests. How do you assess this? You know, we say that's from your perspective, that's
It's a big discussion. So I mean, it has its pros and cons. I mean, over-regulation, as you know, is not something good for a region. On the other hand, we cannot accept unnecessary risk. Therefore, we need to balance. Are we at the balancing? I'm not sure we are. I'm not sure we are because this is exactly what I want to share with you today. It is the time now. It's the right time. We have come up with laws, with regulations. Standardization is still needed, but we have so many laws and regulations. And now we need to standardize these laws and regulations to apply them. So we know what is blockchain. We have dealt thoroughly with this technology. We have implemented it. So we need to push political decisions. And it is about strong political will. So we need to push it. And this is what Blocks and Blockstand does. And this is what I want to share. Yes, they need to continue doing this, because via their work, we are allowed to push things because they fund us and we work more and more and more. And we need to do these standards in order to enable all of these laws. We have so many laws that are sitting in the drawers. And we are unable to use them unless we come up with TSs and ISs and whatever TRs and these documents and ways that we call standards as standardization experts.
now, Christian, that was the perspective of the lawyer. How do you see this relationship in general and between kind of regulation laws and Steve and the current government the audience.
First of all, I want to say that I basically second everything that Christiana said. I basically come from the same place. So when I studied IT, at some point I'm realizing that I don't just want to go to the mines and work code from requirements, that I'm basically just implementing something without stepping fully into my creative potential. And then I thought about what's actually a different way to approach this, and it directly came to me that actually starting with law as the foundation for technical requirements is a very interesting, different approach to how we do things in software development nowadays. Because usually some people develop a business case, they try to min-max a function of revenue generation, and then you give it to the techies and they build something, and then at the end you give it to the lawyer and say, well, where do we have to file the rough edges? So we're basically getting as close to compliance as we have to until our risk is low enough. And I'm just like, this is not really the way to do things. Not well, at least from an idealistic standpoint. And going down that rabbit hole, ultimately, me and a researcher colleague and a good friend of mine who is a lawyer, we came to the conclusion that the first thing we need to work on is basically in harmonizing languages. I mean, even although we are all speaking in English, usually when we're standardizing stuff, the lawyer and the IT guy have different conceptions of what certain words mean. So when you talk about deletion, you probably mean something quite different than when I talk about deletion in a technical sense. And this is basically one of the root problems that cause to the misconception that, or at least I believe that the right to be forgotten can be implemented when blockchain technology is in use. But I don't think it's the right panel to get into the depth of that. I'll probably talk a little bit about that tomorrow. But the quintessence is, and this is basically why I believe that the TC68 work on digital currency vocabulary is one of the important step to lay the foundation for a common language when all the different in industries or topics or disciplines, that they use the same language.
So when jurisdictions.
Yeah, so when we talk about, when we mention a digital currency or money or that, and any term that we use, that we have the same definition and understanding of the word, because otherwise we talk to each other, but if we use the same word that represent different concepts, we can never come to an agreement because we don't even understand what we're talking about. And so I think that's the first step. And then on top of that, that's the foundation to enable meaningful and goal-oriented dialogue that goes across disciplines.
Allow me to share this. I believe that only lawyers who have done litigation and they have issued decisions by the court can go the opposite direction, start from the end and go the other direction rather than going forward. What I mean by that is that when I draft something, when I propose something, when I issue a legal opinion, my end target, my end goal is that I always think that this will end up at court. And why is this relevant to what Christian said? Because it is about interpretation. Because the court, the judges, the arbitrators, mediators, conciliators, whoever, any type of dispute resolution system, they interpret the law and the relation. So that is why standards are useful, because standards operationalize the law. So the judges in their effort to interpret the law, they will gather all what the evidence that they need so that they will be producing the best possible interpretation. So in one example, just one example, because we're talking about digital finance here, and we will the SIU and what is going on and the strategy and the money sitting in the bank and the capital pools that Europe needs to use. It's a deep discussion, okay? But the DLT pilot regime is one good example. What is the DLT pilot regime in Europe? It is there and it has been there since 4 years and we haven't used it. And only recently 2 companies have got the license. What is a DLT pilot regime? It is a pure example reflecting the inadequacy of proper stock markets, because proper stock markets deal with MiFID, MiFID II, MiFID, market abuse, stability, integrity, whatever regulations we have, whatever laws we have, directives and regulations. So within that traditional regime, we cannot apply blockchain. It's simple. It is about a political will that needs to be made now.
Now, after this meta level legal, what is the current kind of from a maybe market or also from a technology perspective, maybe what are the current challenges from your perspective? Taking aside the valid and important kind of regulatory framework initiatives.
I have to be honest, I guess with the market challenges, Christina would probably be a better person to answer this, given that I
Many.
You take this one.
Market challenges, name them. I mean, we have so many. First of all, we didn't find yet the way to move property capital into innovation. It's about that. So we need to find a way. What is innovation? Innovation,
Talk about blockchain,
AI related innovation, but I guess we are here to talk about digital finance, and digital finance is mostly related to this technology. Why? Because it moves capital. I mean, it's blockchain. It moves value. It is because of blockchain we are moving to Web3. Because Web 2 was about the moving, let's say, of the information. Now it's about the value. So value
and ownership.
And ownership, of course. Rights in general. I mean, ownership is a right. We do have many rights. And sometimes I also see it from the legal side of view, of course. No one is wrong, but from the legal side of view, identity and PII is not the same. But some professionals do confuse it. So when we talk about decentralized identity or identity, this is not a subset of a PII. Anyways, these are other discussions. But regarding the challenges, do not have laws and regulations, do not have the standards to implement the laws and regulations that can be applied. So first of all, we need to work more in standardizing the regulation. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I mean, what I can probably add to the question, what are the market needs? What I often hear is that legal certainty is often a problem. And also when you start digging a little bit into the whole venture capital world, about startups, like how you want to build up your own baby in the tech world, it's often, it's very, well, first of all, it's a lot of bullshit bingo. You basically just pick the 5-10 buzzwords that people are currently interested in and that align with the rolling plan. And then you go to investors and then you kind of, you throw the numbers into the magic ball and produce a purely hypothetical business model and scaling model. So people say like, oh yeah, this aligns with what I learned at university. And then you basically just need to make sure that you don't mention anything that is a red flag when it comes to legal uncertainty, legal risk, compliance risk. And I guess this is really where standardization work can help, and basically what Christiana mentioned with harmonized standards. Ideally, where you have the presumption of conformity if you follow a standard that is concrete enough so you can give it to your different departments for them to follow up, because it has been developed with an expert group who covers all the different disciplines that can be kind of adopted and implemented inside of a company. And I guess this is really what we're kind of currently trying to do, and also just it's very helpful that the European Union mobilized this money and kind of pushed it in towards the whole ICT standardization world. So people who are experts, people who have interest, innovation, generalists who can fill the gaps that are needed, can start contributing to the work to get a huge collection of standards going that closely start closing the gaps and giving more clarities to companies in a language that they can work with.
Thank you.
And when I said it's about political will, do we see what is going on with Maker these days? I mean, we do have Maker. Have you seen the banks? Have you talked to the banks? Do you think the banks are ready to implement the regulation? Then you need to ask why. Why, since we do have the regulation, banks, assistant institutional investors are still out there. They are not getting in the game. So they should be the game changers, because they are the big institutions. They have the money, they have the capital. I mean, how do we do that? With regulation, we have it. With laws and regulations, we have them. Standardizing, we do it. It is about political will. This is my belief. So it's the time.
I move to another level. Objections, comments to what we discussed so far about this relationship between law, regulation, payments, and population. Are there any questions to the experts? Chance. Oh, okay, then let's move on to another topic which has been also partly discussed in the previous panel. Okay, now we are in Europe, but we are not alone. Questions? What is kind of the role, and this is also a question of the third panelist who's not here, is what can the EU do at all? Because blockchain is a kind of decentralized system, and what is the influence of the European Union in shaping this technology, also for shaping the market for kind of monetary assets and other assets? Is this really possible, or because we have to really find agreements, consensus with other countries, or are we just not really so powerful outside Europe? That means maybe we can try, but within Europe, obviously there are some implementation issues. But how do you see Europe in a global context?
Maybe I'm still taking this one. So I think the European Commission is already on a quite good path and quite good strategy to build the things that are necessary. And so again, I'm talking here from a techie perspective, and I have been a long year Web3 user, and also identify myself as a degen. And what I learned basically in the depth, in the rabbit hole of the Web3 is what really drives innovation and what really facilitates change are platforms and systems. And I believe with starting the EPSI project, the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, they have really put something out there where you can say, well, if you basically want a DLT system with the maximum assumed level of trust, this is probably it. I think what is the next step, and what they need to do is to really open this system up to a level as we have it in the Web3 environment. Because like the barrier of entry is basically, the only barrier of entry to that is knowledge. You kind of need to know a bit how to code. Probably you need to have no fear of interacting with ChatGPT, so it can help you build the stuff that you want to build if you're not an expert coder already. And you just download a wallet, you go through documentation, you download some open source code, and you can start building stuff. And if you want to, you throw a little bit of money on it and you just deploy it and it runs on a productive system. And you can interact with the world. The problem I see with EPSI at the moment is that, yeah, you can start building around and you can start building stuff in a sandbox. But once you get to the production system, since of course the European Union has to avoid that anything weird or quirky happens, they want to put up some level of entry barrier where they can assure the let's say the credibility and the trustworthiness of the players within the ecosystem. For publicity reasons, and that's basically the second part, but it's a very complex thing. But ultimately, I really believe that providing a platform as open as possible for a community to develop that uses and keeps developing the platform.
Just because you mentioned the topic, and this is kind of my other topic, was a regulatory sandbox. And my question is that really, this opportunity, is that really kind of used and taken up, or what's the current state of play? Because I followed it and I haven't seen much activity. Is that bad? This opportunity of really setting up regulatory sandboxes in this context of context.
It is happening. They have, I don't remember the number, but I think it was somewhere close to 100 projects running actively. Well, but it's happening. But that's exactly what I was talking about, and the point I was getting at. The exposure is quite low.
Very limited.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to say. EU falls behind because of marketing. Yeah. So we do have the infrastructure, it's ready, we can work on it, we can make it better. It's gone open source during the last weeks. What that means from a lawyer's perspective, licensing. So where are the countries which will license the
Representative governments don't see the open versions. This infrastructure has been taken over by 10 member states, including Spain and so on. We are currently in the process to establish a legal entity here in Belgium, most about the Belgium. Also, we just hired a CEO and a CTO. I fully agree with Christian on having a like of semi-permission environment for development and stuff like this. We agree. Regarding the sandbox, the utilities are doing this work, really, but with one important part. They bring the ideas, the legal support, but not the implementation. So as mentioned by Christian also, it was a lot of overwhelm. So hopefully, time will tell, but it's up to the member states now to force them to provide APIs regarding identities as well, and to build the future of Europe blockchain technology. Thank you.
Yeah. Have you heard what he said? I mean, we do have a product and we need to utilize it in Europe. How do we do that? We need to market it. I mean, there are so many countries in the world, they have no idea about these things. We should be educating them, and then we should be implementing these infrastructures in their countries. We should be licensing this infrastructure. Therefore, the idea is that we should be coming up with more infrastructures, not just EPSI, but similar to EPSI, others for other things. many different things. Therefore, we need to invest in infrastructures. It is one of the investment areas we should be looking into in depth.
Could you specify what structure?
With the technical infrastructure, PEPS is the technical infrastructure. So we need to come up with technical infrastructures which provide solutions to EU citizens first, but because we need to move the capital in the EU, but also will be used as solutions to third countries and other regions.
On top of that, you're right, we need infrastructure, but only providing infrastructure isn't solving it like we see, because otherwise EPSI would already be quite successful and adoption would
Comes
be
with
much
the
higher.
salt and pepper
And I think also where I see the puzzle pieces slowly being moved into place is we also need to integrate that technical infrastructure with the services and the products that we already have to improve convenience. Because that's really the one thing that I identified as something that leads to adoption is when you offer people convenience. And I would say if I could, like with EIDAS coming and EPSI, so my dream or my vision where I hope that this goes, that one day I can just go to the public administration website and whatever administration process I have to go through, I can just take my ID card and I don't know, put it on ideally put it on my phone, like keeping hurdles or keeping barriers of entry as low as possible. So use technology and devices that are already available to me. So ideally something on my smartphone that I put my ID card on the NFC reader. This connects with my PC that is somehow interfacing with my wallet where I have all the data on. And then I can sign stuff and it's just the rest should be seamless. Like in the end, the user doesn't really care how things is done in the blockchain. And I think this is also in the end, nobody won't give a damn if it's blockchain technology running in the background or if there are 10 people sitting who are printing out PDFs and putting them in a folder. As long as it's easy for them and it works and it's fast, people will be happy. And that's what they're going to use. And if it's the Apple wallet that gives them this convenience, then they're going to use the Apple wallet and send all the personal data to the US.
And since you said Apple, when Obama got the presidency of the United States, in his very first speech, he talked about IP and IP rights. When we speak of infrastructure, solutions, protocols, networks, software, we can patent them. We can come up with copyrights. So we need to have this IP. Without intellectual property, with intellectual property rights, we can prove innovation in Europe. With innovation, we can enhance our competitiveness. Enhancing our competitiveness will lead us to economic growth. It goes like this. So we see the US and we see China. They are the big leaders on the planet. So since we have to identify this. Therefore, are we falling behind? We should not. We have the means. We do have the weapons. We just need to use them. We just need to use them. We do have the talent. We just need to use it. And we need to pay lots of attention both ways. Startups and SMEs, they are innovating and we ignore them. And then institutional investors. Otherwise, I mean, if I was a bank, if I was a bank, I will share something with you, which maybe you will come across it in a couple of years. And maybe today, when I'm sharing with you, will say bullshit. If I was a bank, I would be pushing for a regulated peer-to-peer lending platform on blockchains. Regulated. Peer-to-peer. Decentralized, but regulated. Why? Because if I have corporations and institutions keeping their money in there, I would love to see them. I would want to incentivize them to lend one another. And I would direct this money in innovation and technology. So this is one way, this is one product that they will be utilizing. There are so many other products, innovative products, that they should be looking. But you know, the issue is that their executives and the people who decide don't know, most of them. I mean, we do have exceptions, but as a rule, they don't understand the technology, so they don't know how to transform a traditional product like insurance products. So many innovative products that we can produce with the use of blockchain.
Yeah, I just wanted to use this opportunity to jump on one of the few points where I actually disagree with you, and that's the bringing up the old paradigm that competitiveness is the best way to drive innovation and to generate value. I believe this has been true for a long time because we didn't have the right tools to make the truly collaborative mindset work, because there was so much room for sneakiness and exploitation due to the intransparency and the lack of trust. But particularly with DLT, and this is, I believe, also illustrating the one use case where DLT makes more sense if you deploy it amongst a consortium of players who don't trust each other but want to collaborate. And I believe there it's not only a technical problem, but also a political and also from a mindset thing that needs to change, that we need to kind of realize, and particularly with the SDGs, with all the climate problems that we're facing. Like, we're facing certain problems that are not created by any particular individual, but that are created by global effects. And I believe the only way that we will be able to tackle those is if we put our differences aside and not really go down the road and say, how can we win this game, but rather which properties and which areas are all the different cultures best in. I believe so China has this very strong thought for community-oriented approach, like far less idealistic. The Americans are just really great at selling things and marketing and how to make things convenient. And Europe is probably the leader when it comes to how to govern highly complex and scale democratic systems, where you have almost more opinions than parties, and you kind of want to make it as fair as possible. And I think we have to throw all those strengths in one bucket and find a collaborative approach how to move things forward, because I believe in the next decades, the problems that we face, we can't afford to lose that much energy in the friction that a competitive approach makes with it.
Thank you. It was really nice concluding statement, but we have here some questions.
I have a question, since it's about digital finance, cryptos, and digital assets. I'm surprised that, for example, right now in the US, you have USDT, which is completely debacked. Probably it will implode. USDT is now almost completely forbidden in Europe because it's not compliant, it's debacked and so on. I'm surprised that from a European point of view, that the European Central Bank has not already launched a fully backed euro stablecoin, because that would have helped a lot, not only for internal commerce, also to, for example, if we talk about peer-to-peer, you need to have some kind of a stable coin as well. There's no European stable coin that exists that is 100% sure. There's one in Finland, one in Iceland, I think, and the one in France is crooked, and there's another one in Spain which is also a bit wonky. What's your point of view on this?
Point of view, yeah, this is what I described earlier. Yes, I do agree with you. I do agree with you, unfortunately. So what do we need to do about that? Why Europe is regulating? We see the regulators, European regulators, who actually lead national regulators. They are seeing things from a different perspective. Why? So the law is there, the regulation is there, it is already up and running. The MiCAR, the Markets and Crypto Assets Regulation, end of December, you know. So what's the position of the banks? Why they still they're not willing to open, for example, accounts for issuers of stablecoins and crypto asset service providers? Why do they make their life so difficult? They want to move the money, and we do have the institutions that they do not proceed with opening the necessary accounts, and then we see some challenging banks and some neobanks. They are progressive. Yeah, they are. But still, the traditional banks, under the credit laws, they are reluctant. Why? So we need the political will. This is what I believe. We don't lack regulation. We don't lack law regulation. We do lack standards. So we need to continue our standardization work. But in this respect, we also need, at this point, the political will. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to answer your question, at least to the extent that I understand it, or at least I want to share my perspective on it. And when I was trading over the last 10 years and using the Cosmos ecosystem, there was a stable coin called euro. I think it was a Danish project. It was very solidly set up. They had like an agreement with a bank, like a fixed interest rates for lending for every euro that is minted, and then basically paying it back when it was destroyed. The project was discontinued, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago. So also like very, very nicely discontinued. So they basically announced that they discontinue the project in half a year. So all the people who still kind of followed the thing somewhat could redeem the euros for real euros before the project got discontinued and just did its own thing. That's how things works on the blockchain. And I believe, or what I think, why all those projects were not really successful is because of the lack of volatility of the stable coins, to the degree how because all stable coins have volatility. That's why they're not called static coins. And I believe the less volatility the currency has, the less potential it is in there for traders to make money. So it's basically an inferior product to work with, which doesn't come to adoption. And I believe the only way to solve this, if you want something that is really stable, reliable, and trustworthy, where the ground rules are laid in MiCA, it needs to be implemented as such, but then you can't really rely on other market actors who have an incentive to use it, but you really need a bank or some other institution to pick it up on behalf of the government or on behalf of the European Union or on behalf of the people to provide a service. But then the question is really, again, how do I make money with this? Because I believe this is also like what it often boils down to. What incentive do I have to do this? Why should I go to all the trouble of setting it up?
Well, for example, I'll give you 3 things. When I wire money to, for example, let's say, I wired money to Ukraine, to buy them jobs. I wired money to Mexico. I wired money to the US. For Mexico, I used Wise. Okay. Why? Much cheaper than banks. For Ukraine, I use direct deposits and the credit cards. Was there in a few seconds. I think they're already on blockchain. And for the US, I use USDC. My costs for transactions are extremely low when I use USDC. If, for example, I would send the same money via the banks, I'm thousands euros lighter. That's the reason why they refuse to implement it, as far as I'm concerned. The fee calculation that the regular banks do is huge compared to, for example, if you work with stable coins. You still have a gas fee that I can use there, but that's the way, that's where I see the trouble being. But if you compare it to all the tariffs that they use, if you use stable coins, you can still use a tariff. It'll be way, way lower than when you use the conventional transfers. As far as I know, that's reasonable.
That's true. Again, I think this links back to incentive, like the bank, they invested a lot to set up those money transfer systems, and they want to get revenue. What's the incentive of the Web3 platforms that provide you the service? They care about adoption. So all they are interested in is to cover their costs and to grow adoption, because they know that adoption for them has more value than the short-term gains. But the banks already have the highest adoption in the world, so that's like trying to carry ours to Athens.
Hey,
Knut.
thanks a lot. It was very interesting. It was a nice kind of like last statement, but just to summarize a little bit, I think there is on the one hand, or there are different challenges. We have the level of regulation with laws, then to kind of really bring it now to concrete standards. That's one thing. Then we have the regulations, which are obviously not per se also not leading to significant changes and being ignored, as I understood. And the opportunities are not taken also of new technologies. And in the banking sector, we have these big incumbents, which are, as you said, are not really interested in kind of maybe changing their successful business model, where they are making quite nice revenues. And therefore, I think we see here also a little the problems that we have seen, for example, with German car manufacturers. They make a huge profit with their fossil fuel combustion engine cars, and we're not really into getting into electric cars. Yeah, you see some similar pattern that maybe the opportunities of blockchain for purpose of digital assets is for the big majority of the incumbents not really so attractive, and where are the incentives?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't believe the crypto ecosystem as it is today is really unattractive to the average person, because the risks that come with it are that they are off the charts. Like, you really need a very, very deep understanding of the technology, and also a lot of guts and faith in the team that built the whole system, because you're just throwing some money at it and you're hoping that everything works. And on top of that, you hope that you understood it well enough that you're using it correctly. So, I mean, we've all seen the examples that if you don't understand something correctly and you just assume it works like this, but it behaves differently, well, your money's gone. So,
I think the EU lacks the skills to monetize their good frameworks. MiCAR is a very good framework. It's a really good one, and they have worked hard to do it, to implement, to enact this legislation, let's say, and now we are preparing several standards on this regulation. But how is the EU going to market this regulation? Because this regulation provides for new products, kind of financial instruments. So do they have a solid plan on how to market these financial instruments? Because stable coins are really good under MiCA. They may not be static as Christian said, but for us, traditional lawyers, so many years in banking and finance, stable coins are safe. Do the other regions know that stable coins are safer in the EU? Has the EU done anything to promote this? Because these are products, they have to sell them. So Europe has to sell what they have. Therefore, they have to leverage this particular legislation, regulation, in order to achieve its monetization. I know it sounds like, what is she saying now? It's about that, because this regulation, specifically this regulation, has so many products under it. And the investors are well protected. I mean, we should not be looking to protect investors 100%. They are investing. They have to accept some risk. So, but with MiCA, we have achieved such a high level of protection, and we just have to promote this, share with the outside world, and of course our investors, our e-rings. So institutional investors should understand this and deal with this regulation. Of course, we are already training. I mean, at least as I said before, in a few countries with the regulators, we have trained them already, especially the central banks, but also with other regulators and third parties. They are interested in MiCA. So they have reached out and they are asking questions about the different categories and the differentiation between the issuers and the CASP and the licensing regime in general. This is, I mean, it seems that we left it on them to reach out to us. Why we should be promoting it? Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm for lunch.
It was, to be honest, guys, we haven't even seen. We haven't talked anything, so it was just purely spontaneous.
We build some insights, and there's a parallel insights from our discussion to the previous one. We still have an implementation. The previous discussion was that the infrastructure is there, but it's not really used in the way it could be used. This is also more general reflection. Thanks also for your patience, for your questions, and yeah, have a nice time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lutz, Christian, and Christina. It's time for the lunch break. So nothing happens in this room anymore today. All the conference happens on the plenary, so you don't need to come back, for the rest of the day. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you. Thank you for those at home as well for following us.